Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jen Longacre, and I'm the Media Relations and Public Affairs Director at the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Today, you'll hear from 5 speakers, including a victim of a cryptocurrency kiosk scam, and they will be talking about Minnesota's new ban on cryptocurrency kiosks, which goes into effect tomorrow. If you could hold your questions until the end, that would be great. If you need any spellings, speaker names, I can get those for you, but they will be introducing themselves when I come up to the podium so you can get proper pronunciation. With that, I will turn it over to our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Payne. I am the Assistant Commissioner for Enforcement at the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Starting tomorrow, August 1st, cryptocurrency kiosks will be illegal in the state of Minnesota. Crypto kiosks tend to resemble traditional ATMs and allow users to buy or sell cryptocurrency using cash. Crypto kiosks are often found in grocery stores, gas stations, and convenience stores. As of earlier this year, Minnesota had approximately 400 crypto kiosks operating across the state by a handful of operators. Most Minnesotans have never used a crypto kiosk, but scammers know exactly how to use them. While some people use these kiosks for a legitimate purpose, criminals value them because they allow cash to be converted quickly into cryptocurrency and moved beyond the reach of victims and law enforcement. Once these transactions are complete, it is incredibly difficult to recover the funds. Protecting consumers is one of the core responsibilities of the Minnesota Department of Commerce. That's why our department and the people you see behind me today have worked so diligently over the past year to help pass this critical legislation banning crypto kiosks in Minnesota. I'm incredibly proud of our enforcement team and the many partners you see here today, including the Minnesota Legislature, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, AARP, Woodbury Police Department, and the many other law enforcement agencies that are represented here today. They all came together to help stop criminals from exploiting Minnesotans. Across Minnesota, families have lost thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in just minutes through crypto kiosk scams. We see the same pattern over and over again. A scammer contacts someone and creates a sense of urgency or fear. They may claim there's an arrest warrant for that person, that their bank account has been compromised, that a grandchild needs bail money, or that someone they've developed a relationship with online is facing a financial emergency. They pressure you and they talk fast. The victim is instructed to withdraw cash from their bank or credit union, drive to a crypto kiosk, and deposit that money into the machine. Along the way, they're often coached to lie to their financial institution, to their family or friends, or law enforcement if people ask them questions. Within minutes, that cash is converted to cryptocurrency and transferred to criminals. By the time the victims realize they've been deceived, the money is long gone. The figures you see on this board here today represent only the scams that we know about. Many victims, especially those targeted through romance scams, never report because they may feel embarrassed, ashamed, or devastated by what they've experienced. I want every victim to hear this clearly. You are not to blame. You did not fall for a scam. You are the victim of a serious crime. And your willingness to report and step forward allows the government and law enforcement agencies to help protect other Minnesotans and prevent them from being exploited as well. If you believe you've been targeted by a cryptocurrency scam, please report it immediately. While it isn't always possible to get your money back, acting quickly gives law enforcement and investigators the best opportunity to help. The Department of Commerce is working with licensed money services businesses to ensure that they understand and comply with the law that starts tomorrow. Please call or email the department if you see an operating crypto kiosk after tomorrow. We can take enforcement action against the kiosk operator, which can include legal sanctions and civil penalties. Tomorrow's ban is a major step forward. The law is critical because there is no such thing as a safe cryptocurrency machine in Minnesota. We want to prevent other Minnesotans from experiencing financial and emotional devastation these scams cause. But laws alone are not enough. Awareness is one of our most powerful tools. The more people who know about these scams, the harder it becomes for criminals to succeed. That's why I'm especially grateful that Sister Agnes Foley has agreed to share her story today in the hopes that others won't become victims. Thank you, Sister Agnes, for your willingness to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you for asking me to tell my story regarding thieves and Bitcoin. It was March of 2025 when I opened my Apple computer to the announcement that it had been hacked and said I needed to go to the bank and take my money out. I then received a call, and the person on the phone, who I thought was from the bank, indicated he would be with me on my iPhone. After getting my money out from the bank in cash, I was directed to a place on Ford Parkway, a liquor store, with a Bitcoin machine. Fortunately, I had left the phone in the car. It was morning, and there were no other customers in the store, and the owners in the liquor store indicated that there had been some problems with that Bitcoin machine. I took that as good advice from them. So I left and got back in the car, and the directions now were that I was to go to Target and do this. I was now feeling more and more uncomfortable, and I decided to stop on my way at Carondelet Village, which is my home, and I called the computer help person that we have. He had words for the man still on the iPhone. Since that time, I found that my computer had been hacked. I paid $179 to remove both malware and viruses. After that time, my iPhone was hacked, and Consumer Cellular helped. I have since called Apple support, and other things were found on my computer that they deleted. I still don't feel safe. I turn off my computer each time I'm not using it, even if it's for a very short period of time. But I am delighted that Minnesota will now have a law banning cryptocurrency. So I thank you in advance for your attention to this. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, and thank you, Sister Agnes, for sharing your story here today. It's critically important that Minnesotans hear from people like you. And these criminals have a habit of preying on the goodwill of people like yourself. And so we're so grateful for you to share, to understand the importance of this. Good morning, I'm Drew Evans. I'm the superintendent at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. We're here today to discuss a meaningful step forward in protecting Minnesotans from crypto fraudsters. Cryptocurrency itself is not the issue. The issue is how these cryptocurrency kiosks have been repeatedly used by criminals to take Minnesotans' hard-earned money. These kiosks are not typically where the scam actually begins. Victims are often targeted through government or law enforcement impersonation, family emergency scams, romance scams, or technical support scams, or calls from somebody pretending to represent the bank. Once a victim is convinced there's an emergency, the kiosk becomes an extremely effective payment mechanism. Transactions happen quickly, are difficult to reverse, and can move money outside of Minnesota to the United States almost immediately. Criminals often stay on the phone throughout the transaction. They coach the victims on what to say, tell them to ignore fraud warnings, and direct them to divide money into smaller transactions, much like you just heard. Earlier just this year, one of our agents from our BCA Financial Crimes and Fraud Unit was in one of these locations, saw somebody that was an elderly person that was feeding money into a machine, and almost immediately recognized something could be wrong. They fed that money into that crypto kiosk, and as he inquired, as his experience told him what was likely happening, he determined that the person was being scammed and was able to step in and help. But part of the reason we're here today is, unfortunately, far too many people don't have that someone to step in and help, which is why this law was desperately needed, and we're grateful for the Minnesota legislature for passing it. This law removes a payment mechanism that criminals have repeatedly exploited while preserving Minnesotans' lawful ability to access cryptocurrency through other platforms. It will not eliminate fraud. Criminals continue looking for new ways to obtain money, but removing cryptocurrency kiosks closes an important pathway that allows them to receive funds rapidly with limited opportunity for intervention. These mechanisms gave criminals easy access to a victim's wallet to then send it to funds a criminal-controlled account. This law closes that lane and gives Minnesotans one less place where a moment of fear can become a life-changing financial loss. Reported losses only represent part of the harm. As the Assistant Commissioner noted, some victims are embarrassed and don't want to immediately understand what happened or believe there is no reason to report the crime because the cryptocurrency has already been transferred. But please don't be embarrassed. And while it's difficult, sometimes there are tools we are to recover those losses, and these criminals are cunning and sophisticated. If you believe you've been scammed, it is not because something you did wrong, it's because somebody targeted your goodwill and you as a person. So please report it to law enforcement. These investigations frequently cross city, county, and state and international boundaries. They require coordination among local law enforcement, the BCA, federal law enforcement agencies, financial institutions, cryptocurrency companies, and regulatory partners such as the Department of Commerce. The BCA will continue working with our partners at the Department of Commerce and other public safety partners and regulatory and banking industry and cryptocurrency industry to identify these schemes, investigate the people responsible, and educate Minnesotans about emerging threats. Our message to Minnesotans is really simple. No legitimate law enforcement agency, government office, bank, or business will demand that you deposit cash into a cryptocurrency kiosk to protect your account, avoid arrest, or resolve an emergency, or help a family member. And starting now, we will ensure these kiosks are not available as a mechanism to defraud you and your loved ones. When someone creates a sense of urgency and directs you to a cryptocurrency kiosk or tries to get you to send money by other means with urgency, stop. Hang up, contact someone you trust, independently verify the situation, and report it to law enforcement. These machines gave criminals an easy mechanism to take crypto from a victim's, or take money from a victim's wallet to a criminal-controlled account. This law eliminates that mechanism to steal from Minnesotans. Criminals, unfortunately, have exploited this, and this is one meaningful step towards protecting Minnesotans, giving them one less place where a moment of fear can become a life-changing financial loss. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Poles. I'm the Public Safety Director and Police Chief for the Woodbury Police Department. You know, for our officers, this isn't a hypothetical problem. It's happening right here. Before kiosks were removed, we responded to numerous calls involving kiosks in Woodbury, as other agencies have throughout the metro. Many victims were following instructions from someone they believed to be a government official, a law enforcement officer, a bank representative, or a company employee. In other words, someone they could trust. They were told to withdraw cash, go to a kiosk, and purchase thousands of dollars of cryptocurrency. That cryptocurrency was then instantly transferred to the scammers. By the time the victims realized it was a scam, the money was often gone. Our officers and detectives have spent countless hours responding to and investigating these crimes. In many cases, when officers arrived, victims were standing at the kiosk or preparing to make the transaction. Their jobs often became convincing someone that was under tremendous pressure from a scammer that the person on the phone was lying. Despite this, they were often able to stop the transactions just in time. Other times they arrived minutes too late. Our officers' efforts represent hundreds of thousands of dollars that stayed in victims' bank accounts instead of ending up in the hands of criminals. I'd like to recognize the employees at the local gas stations also. More than once, they noticed scammers, or customers rather, who seemed distressed, confused, or were making unusually large cash transactions. Rather than ignore it, they called the police. Those calls gave our officers a chance to intervene before people lost their savings. It shows that preventing fraud truly is a community effort. Our officers and detectives investigate these crimes, work to identify suspects, coordinate with state and federal partners, and most importantly, educate the community before someone becomes the next victim. Our experience in this area has led to our detectives becoming subject matter experts, and they've collaborated with other agencies to help advocate and prevent future scams. Every time law enforcement interrupts one of these scams, we're protecting not just someone's bank account, but their financial future and their sense of personal safety and security. Our officers have seen firsthand the devastation these scams have caused. They sat with victims who've lost tens of thousands of dollars. They've watched families try to figure out how they're going to move forward with life-changing loss. Those experiences are why we support efforts to make it harder for criminals to exploit Minnesotans. We appreciate the partnership with Senator Amanda Hemmingsen-Yager, who asked her staff to testify and share our experience to advocate for this new law. I'd also like to give a special shout out to two of our detectives, Lucas Rogers and Lynn Lawrence, who both spent countless hours investigating, advocating, and sharing their subject matter expertise with organizations from around the metro and state. Today's ban removes a tool, making it harder for scammers to victimize our community. Woodbury Police would also like to thank our City Council for supporting staff efforts in this area and extend a special thank you to Senator Amanda Hemmings-Yager, who authored the bill banning these kiosks. Our community is better protected from these scammers due to their efforts. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jim Glass. I'm an AARP volunteer from Minneapolis. I spent most of my professional career in banking. First as a bank regulator, then as a risk manager for a large bank here in Minnesota. I've seen many different kinds of financial risks over the years, but nothing really prepared me for the scope of these cryptocurrency kiosk scams. When I first learned about these machines, honestly, I wondered whether they were really that big of a problem. Many of us have walked right past them in grocery stores, gas stations, and convenience stores without giving them a second thought. But to criminals, these kiosks are very powerful tools for anonymously and irreversibly stealing Minnesotans' hard-earned money. Behind every one of these transactions is a real person, someone who worked hard, saved carefully, and suddenly their money disappears. I met Sister Agnes Foley, who you just heard from a little bit ago, while testifying at the Minnesota State Capitol earlier this year. In her testimony to the legislature, she shared how a scammer sent her to a liquor store cryptocurrency kiosk, and how that experience permanently changed the way she feels about her own safety. Even though her experience took place a few years ago, she told lawmakers, as she just said, she still doesn't feel safe. That stayed with me, because this is not just about technology or federal regulation, financial regulation. It's about people being scared, pressured, and manipulated into handing over money they may never recover. Law enforcement leaders from across Minnesota told lawmakers they were seeing stories like this in their own communities. They made it clear that once money goes into these machines, recovering it is extremely difficult. The damage can happen in minutes, while the consequences can last a lifetime. These scams end today in Minnesota. This law passed with strong bipartisan support because protecting people from fraud is not a partisan issue, it's a human issue. Minnesota now joins other cities and states across the country that have worked to remove these fraud-riddled machines. For every scam that never happens, every retirement account that remains intact, and every family spared the heartbreak of financial loss, this law will make a huge difference. I'm grateful to Governor Walz, lawmakers from both parties who listened to the law enforcement leaders, to victims who bravely shared what happened to them, and to the AARP volunteers who kept showing up. I'm proud that ordinary Minnesotans were heard, and I'm proud that Minnesota acted to protect people from a tool criminals use to steal hard-earned savings. Today, Minnesotans are safer because of these efforts. And that's something every Minnesotan can be proud of. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
With that, we'll open it up to questions. If you could state your name and outlet you're with, and if you have a specific person you want to answer the question, that would be helpful.
My question is for you, Assistant Commissioner. I'm Bailey with Channel 5. Oh, my question's for you, right? Oh, both of you. Sorry. I'm not that. Sorry. So my question is, you spoke briefly about some penalties, civil penalties. Can you just talk about that more? Just what people can do and what they should be looking out for? Who should they call if they see these are still up and operating? And then also fast forwarding to December, I know that these have until December to go away. If people see them still in the grocery store, the convenience store come January, again, who do they call? What's the penalty for that? Kind of a large question. Anyway.
No, that's a great question. So the Minnesota Department of Commerce regulates money services businesses. We license those individuals. They are the ones who have been operating the cryptocurrency kiosks in the state of Minnesota. In our regulatory role, we are working with those operators to ensure that they will be complying with the law and that there will be no kiosks operating starting tomorrow. If people see a crypto kiosk machine when they're out and about, they can call the Minnesota Department of Commerce at 651-539-1600. We also have established a dedicated email address where folks can let us know if they have seen a kiosk. It's a long one, virtual currency kiosk reporting.comm@state.mn.us. The Minnesota Department of Commerce, in its enforcement role, can then initiate investigations into these sightings, and if we find that someone is illegally operating a kiosk, we can take administrative action. That can include things like cease and desists and civil monetary penalties for the operators of those kiosks.
Do you have like an amount of what that would look like?
The amount of civil penalty that the department can assess is based on statutory factors. So we would look at things like the willingness of the violation, how many kiosks are operating, how long have they been operating. But to be clear, we have a zero tolerance policy for any kiosk that is operating after tomorrow.
Quinn Gorham with Gray Media, bureau reporter for a couple TV stations in greater Minnesota. Also for the assistant commissioner, can you talk about the mechanisms, you did touch on this a little bit, but with these machines that make them so common for these types of scams, and what is it that sort of draws scammers to these crypto kiosks?
So, and maybe law enforcement can add here a little bit too, but what makes these kiosks such an effective conduit for fraud and criminal enterprise is that these transactions are largely anonymous, they're instantaneous, and the money, as Superintendent Evans says, goes all over the world. So once it leaves not just Minnesota, but the United States, it's very challenging for law enforcement to get the money back. I think anonymity is a really big part of it as well. So it just is very, very challenging.
So to follow up on that, maybe a law enforcement individual could answer this. Does that make it harder then to trace that money and maybe get that back to people that have been scammed by these individuals?
Yeah, I would just say by the nature of the transaction, in terms of the speed in which that it can be completed, in terms of a fraud, the reason why this is so heinous is that it will often involve the pressure, and that's been talked about here today, but really can't be understated. I mean, the pressure in which that is applied, the consistency of it, and then ultimately once these transactions take place, the speed in which those dollars go from that account to these crypto wallets and then get moved on throughout the country and throughout the world. So we've been working with, our detectives have been working with metro, local, national, international law enforcement agencies from track to work to recover it, but it's very challenging and it requires a lot of time and effort to do that. I'm very proud of our detectives going the extra mile in this area and have been successful in some cases in recovering those dollars. But ultimately, this ban goes a long way in addressing this issue at its core, which ultimately will make our community safer.
Can I add just one more thing to this? I think it's important too to answer your question. Crypto by its very nature and the way it was designed, it's not a traditional financial instrument as well. So that's part of what makes this difficult, and there's a lack of federal regulation around crypto. And so many of the companies are overseas to begin with. It's difficult for us to trace back and create cooperation. There are a number of, not a number, there's one large federal bill that we continue to express as a law enforcement community to make some adjustments to ensure law enforcement has the tools so that in some of our other traditional financial scams where we're able to recover money, put stop payments, that we build some of that into regulation as it goes forward, because crypto is difficult just in its general nature, as the chief said, to recover it to begin with, but because of how it's structured and how you access that to begin with, it becomes incredibly difficult without cooperation from the companies themselves.
With Tier 11, I have a question for investigators. You guys can talk about it. Do you have any information about who's doing this broad investigation?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So that piece of this makes this really challenging in terms of who are the bad actors that are perpetuating this issue. We've had both local and international countrywide culprits that have been involved in this. So I don't know that I would identify any specific group. It's been prolific in terms of here in the United States, and we've seen instances as well where this is being perpetuated by those from outside the country as well.
So all of these different scams are not connected by the same group or people, it's all just random people taking money from other people?
Yeah, from our experience, it's been different groups have been involved in this activity. It's not a single bad actor, but an issue with, structurally it creates opportunities for those looking to do harm. It gives them an opportunity.
For the assistant commissioner again, can you talk about some of the legitimate uses for these machines and maybe people that have expressed, I guess, frustration that maybe if they were going to these machines to use them for a legitimate purpose, they're now no longer going to be able to do that?
Yeah, so the question is about legitimate cryptocurrency exchange in the state of Minnesota. And that is certainly something that crypto enthusiasts will be able to do. There are still a number of safe and lawful methods for people to engage in the purchase, exchange, and selling of cryptocurrency in Minnesota. There are numerous online and licensed platforms with consumer protections, and their fees are generally cheaper than the kiosks were as well. In fact, earlier this year, the legislature also passed another piece of law that deals with cryptocurrency, which allows state chartered banks and credit unions to be cryptocurrency custodians, and then places some safeguards around that. So there are increasing opportunities to engage in lawful and safe cryptocurrency exchange in Minnesota. The reason that the kiosks themselves are banned is because they were such an effective tool for fraud. And we haven't received complaints from any consumers. We've received nothing but positive feedback from consumers, from law enforcement agents, from advocacy groups.
Was the draw then to the kiosks, I guess, similar to what a person might say is convenient about just having a regular ATM somewhere, just sort of the convenience of having that in these locations?
Kiosks were originally established and adopted to try to facilitate easy exchange of cryptocurrency. But because there's so many other viable options, the kiosks are not needed in Minnesota, given the danger that they pose.
And I would just add one last thing to that that I think it's important to know. And first off, our legislature I find them to be very thoughtful. To ban something shows really the challenge that we're up against. But also, this is not unique to Minnesota. The International Association of Chiefs of Police just adopted a resolution to either put in strict regulation of these kiosks or ban them altogether, which is not a position you usually see our law enforcement associations take place. So I think Minnesotans can deduct exactly how these were being used.
Any other questions? Good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. If you guys need anything.